It is, what's today, Wednesday?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So it's Wednesday, and we are getting ready to hang out, just me and Brethren. Okay.
First we are going to Dave & Buster's, then lunch, and then we will go
Got him again. How you feeling, man?
This is me, Brevin Latimer. Love to do some dirt bike riding. That's what I'm basically showing you right now. This is our track that we basically made this year. We left some 2018 turns and 2019 turns. So basically all of these are 2019 turns now. We're at the compound today. We're at the compound today. Brentley is already riding. I'm trying to get to ride because he said I can't ride, but I can if I want to.
You hit the double, dude. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, he just hit the double. What's up, bro? All right, go do it again.
That was our first moto of the day, and in a couple minutes we are going to do our second moto.
Tournament season's down for a little bit, so I've been in the yard playing, doing a few races, having a lot of fun with the boys during the off season, doing a little racing. Maybe I'll do a little racing myself. Let me know in the comment section if you'd like to see me do a race. I thought about doing that. I used to ride when I was much younger, and of course, now that I'm in my 30s, it's probably not the best idea to be running around on a motocross track, but I've definitely thought about strapping up the boots and doing a race this fall. So put it in the comment section. I thought about it being a really cool vlog series. If you think you'd like to see something like that, let me know. I'll think about it. I definitely had it on my mind, so we'll do it if you guys will watch it. Today, we're going to talk about braid setups. That's what you clicked on the video on. You didn't click on it to look at dirt bikes. We're going to talk about braid setups. So let's go out in the shop and check it out. I'm going to tell you why braid can be an advantage in certain situations to use on your spinning outfits. Oh, yes! Yes! All right, so spinning equipment, here we go. Everybody's got a spinning reel, right? And it's very popular nowadays, especially nowadays, to go braid to fluorocarbon. You know, I won't get much into, you know, what knots to use and so forth. I personally use an Alberto knot. If you need to know what that is, you can find that on my channel. I'll put a link in the description box on this video so you can go learn how to tie Alberto knot. Of course, there's knots that's better than Alberto knot. You know why Alberto knot's best for me? Because it's easy to tie. I retie a lot. I just like an Alberto. FG knot is probably a lot better knot. However, if you don't tie the FG knot perfectly, it's going to fail on you. I've tried it. That's why I'm still tying the Alberto knot. The best knot that you can tie is the knot that you can tie. Remember that. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, why you need to use braid. In this video, we're just going to concentrate on the braid to fluoro setup when you're talking about spinning rods. Now, there are situations, I've been very vocal about it, there is situations where I think straight fluorocarbon outshines braid. But in this particular video, we're only going to talk about using braid on your spinning equipment. I do use braid a lot, probably the most on my spinning outfits. The reasons that I use braid, one thing you always hear a lot of guys talk about when you're talking about spinning equipment is, oh, light line, all this, finesse this, and I don't think most anglers have really wrapped their mind around what a spinning rod is. You've heard it referred to as a fairy wand. You've heard it referred to as all this egg beater, a lot of that kind of stuff. A spinning rod is nothing more than a tool. Imagine me going over here in my toolbox, this right there, and I tried to work on something in my shop only with 3/4 inch wrenches, because I'm a big man and I like big wrenches. It wouldn't work that well, would it? Well, that's the same thing you have when you're talking about using your fishing rods. You have got to use the tool that helps you get the job done the best. And there are times when a spinning outfit by far outshines bait casting equipment. Yes, I use bait casting equipment. You've seen me use it. As a matter of fact, that's probably one of my favorite ways to do is jack them up out of some grass with 50-pound test braid. That's what's out here. This is nothing gets me turned on more than crossing his eyes and knocking his lights out with 50-pound test braid, a heavy action rod, and setting the hook as about as hard as I can. I love it. But there's times where that don't work, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. So that's why you got to have spinning equipment. And I don't mean, well, fishing's tough, or I don't mean that, oh, there's too much pressure on my lake and I need to downsize to 4-pound test. That's not what I'm talking about. We're gonna get into that in this video. There's times where spinning equipment gets a very light lure, even if it's big. There's times where spinning equipment gets even a bigger lure. Small crankbaits and so forth, they cast better. I'm more efficient. It's easier to get the job done with the spinning outfit than it is a bait casting equipment. So if I'm more efficient and I can get the bait out there easier, I can get it down, I can cast it farther, that means I am going to catch more fish. So that's why you got to always remember to choose the best piece of equipment. All right, so let's talk about this. What are some of the benefits of going braid to fluoro on my spinning equipment? What's some of the benefits? Well, first off, one of the benefits is I can cast very, very light lures, weightless worms, weightless stick baits, you know, any of that really light stuff, little small marabou jigs that are really tough to throw. I can get those baits out there much farther if I'm using braid setup on my spinning equipment. That braid just comes off the reel a lot more fluently. You know, it's a much smaller diameter. It creates less friction, and it comes off the reel much better for starters. So when I'm casting a little bitty weightless soft plastic, if I'm casting a little bitty shaky head, and I need to get that bait out there, I'm fan casting over a flat, and I need to get that bait way out there, that braid to fluoro setup is going to let me cast it out a lot farther. Another advantage to it is that, you know, when I'm using a braid setup on my spinning equipment, I got a little bit more hook set power when I go to set the hook on a fish. That's important. A lot of times when you're using braided fluorocarbon, you're still using fairly light line. We're going to talk about that. There's some situations where I'll use pretty heavy line. But, you know, I don't have to really set the hook really hard. You're using, typically with finesse baits, you're going to be using lighter wire hooks, so you can't really afford to muscle that fish a lot. But you can just pull on him gently, and because that braid has no stretch in it whatsoever, you can get hook penetration on the fish, get that hook in his mouth, and you'll have no problems getting that fish in the boat.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. It's this big old smallmouth. Oh, God. That's a good one. It's a big largemouth. Play this one good. Oh God. Oh yes!
You know, the next advantage that I'm going to talk about when you're using braid to fluoro setup on your spinning equipment is probably my most favorite, and I think is the most beneficial reason that you need to use braid to fluorocarbon setup on your spinning equipment. You know, I don't know if you guys have ever tried to use anything bigger than probably 10-pound test on a spinning reel. If you've ever tried that, you'll notice it does not like to stay on the rod at all. When, you know, especially when you're talking about fluorocarbon is a much stiffer material than mono. And when you get much above 10-pound test, fluorocarbon wants to jump off of the reel. It's real coily and it wants to back off the reel constantly, which is not really that easy to deal with, especially when you're just trying to cast lighter baits. That line is continuously trying to come off the reel, and that's how you get a lot of bird nests. You end up with a lot of problems when you're talking about using spinning equipment. Well, my favorite thing about using braided fluorocarbon is it lets me upsize my fluorocarbon size. So most of the time when we're using braid, I'm going to use 15 to 20-pound test braid. I think that gets you through just about any situation. I've fished with 15 to 20-pound test braid, I fish with everything from redfish to trout, spotted bass, largemouth, fishing grass, skipping docks. Just about every situation that you'll come through with one of these sticks right here, I've done it with 15 or 20-pound test braid. And there's certain situations where I feel like 15-pound test outshines the 20-pound test. But if you're going to just have one, I'd probably say go with 20-pound test braid, and that'll get you through every situation you'll go through. Let's say I need spinning equipment because I'm using a little light, weightless finesse worm. Well, I might not always want to use 8-pound test. Maybe I'm fishing around heavy structure. I'm fishing it around grass. And I really need to be able to turn that fish a little bit harder than 10-pound test or 8-pound test will let me. The best thing about it is when you've got braid on your reel is that you can upsize your line. So I've got 20-pound test braid. That's going to cover me, right? Now I can upsize my line, my main line, my leader line to 12-pound test. 15-pound test if I need to. I've done that a bunch. A lot of times when you see me with a spinning rod and I'm fishing shallow and putting my finesse baits in places where they're a little bit tough to get to, I'm not using small line. I'm using 15-pound test, 12-pound test minimum. There's no reason to downsize on line, but I need to throw a bait that's lighter. And I can do that with braid. Now, if I tried to spool this reel right here up with 15-pound test fluorocarbon, it ain't going to work. I promise you it will not work. But having braid on there, with it being smaller diameter, much more limp and supple material, it will stay on the reel and it will not come off and create a lot of bird's nests. But if I need to get down dirty and nasty with my spinning rod, I can now upsize my fluorocarbon to 12, 15-pound tests. Heck, if I'm out there red fishing and we're around a lot of oyster beds, I'll go the 20-pound test because it's not necessarily about the line size, but it's about the presentation and getting that bait where I need it to go. Perhaps I think that's the most valuable reason for you to use braid to fluorocarbon setup on your spinning equipment. So while it's all that talk about, you know, braid to fluoro setup, let's go ahead and just rig up a rod with braid to fluorocarbon, and I'll show you exactly the line that I use and the setup and the knots that I use and so forth, and how I rig my rod, my reel, when I'm going braid to fluorocarbon. This braid to fluorocarbon, this backing up the spool with Alberto Knot. I'm not going to just go into a whole bunch of detail of how to tie a Alberto knot. You guys can go to the next video on here. I'll put it on the end, on the suggested videos, as well as the description. And you're just going to tie Alberto knot to the existing backing material, whether you use braid, fluorocarbon, whatever. Any kind of junk line you can use as braid. You just need something to back that braid to, so it has something to bond to and won't slip on the spool. And that's my little knot there. You can see it is very, very small. Braid. There's a couple ways to spool it up. This is just gonna be the easiest way to tell you to do this. I just lay my braid with the label up, my spool on the label up. I'll just spool it on. With braid, you don't have to be quite as peculiar about how that line is spooled onto the reel as you do just putting straight up fluorocarbon on your reel. So after you do that, you're just gonna just spool it right onto your reel. Spool it on there, and it's really important not to put too much braid on your reel. If you get too much braid on your reel, what's going to happen is that braid, when you go to make a cast, and that little bit of slack line that you have in your reel when the bait hits the water is going to back down your rod into your reel, and what you're going to have is just, you'll get an overloop, I don't even think that's the thing. You'll get a little loop in your line, and it'll back off a little bit easier. So you definitely want to leave a little bit of space on your spool when you're putting braid on your spool. So there we go. There we go. You see I've got just a little bit of space left on my spool here on the upper portion. I like to leave that just a little bit low. I'd rather have a little less than too much line. Too much line can cause a lot of problems on a spinning reel. So here you go. The whole beauty in this right here is using this braid is I never have to change my main line. I can be out fishing during the day of fishing, and let's say I want to use 6-pound test. I only have to change my leader line. Or all of a sudden we get in a situation I'm throwing a little bit heavier bait and I need a little bit more strength, then boom, all I change is my leader line and I up it to 8-pound test. Or perhaps I really need to throw my bait in some nasty stuff. Don't want to change my whole spool. Furthermore, I can't put any bigger line on the reel. But I can upsize my line all the way to 15-pound test, still get that fluid casting distance, still get long distance on my cast because I have the right braid on my reel, but still have enough muscle to get that fish out of the thick stuff because all I have to change is my leader line to 15-pound test. And using this setup allows you to do that. To me, that is the most valuable reason to use braid to fluorocarbon. Hey, so I hope this video helps you out a little bit of wrapping your mind around why you should be using braid to fluorocarbon setups when you're out there fishing, especially with your spinning equipment. You can use it on bait casting equipment as well, but especially when you're talking about using it on your spinning equipment. So on the next video, we'll talk a little bit about why you should use fluorocarbon in some of the situations, scenarios where that shines a little bit better. Trust me, it makes a big difference, and you need to know which one is best for each situation. The next video, we'll talk about using straight fluorocarbon and the reasons why you need to use straight up fluoro.